when you're helping someone recover, the things if I'm going to take away anorexia, they identify with what you're going to take away the parts of me where I can be incredibly driven, incredibly successful, and something special. This is from my special trait. I can be, I can achieve incredible things, and you want to take that bit away. So what you're trying to do within that is actually you have to build something better so that they have an option and a choice.
Apologies for the sound quality. We experienced some technical difficulties during this episode. Thank you for your understanding, and we hope you still enjoy the content. We're joined today by Thomas Midgley, the founding director at the Robu Clinic and the Body Image Treatment Clinic, both on Harley Street, London.
So Tom, thank you for joining us today. Can you introduce yourself to us, please?
Definitely. Thanks for having me, guys. Yeah, I'm the founding director at the Robu Clinic and the Body Image Treatment Clinic on Harley Street. I'm also a behavioural and cognitive and compassion-focused psychotherapist and a highly specialised eating disorders dietitian. And yeah, the areas we specialise in our clinic, one clinic particularly body image, so that tends to be things like body dysmorphic disorder or in individuals who are struggling with any body-related issues that can be caused by injury, trauma, so on and so forth. We also have the Robu Clinic where we specialise in eating disorders and other general health presentations. Me personally, over the years, I've been in eating disorders and body image around 25 years, and in the last 15 years, really, I've focused on complex presentations, normally clinician clients who have struggled to recover from traditional treatments.
Wow, thank you, Tom.
Wow, indeed. What brought you into this field of work? How did you get interested in it?
I didn't. I fell into it by complete accident.
How did that happen?
I was going to do a locum post at a hospital, and I arrived 5 minutes before. This was from a dietitian post, but before the dietitian, and I was told I was going to be put on healthcare of the elderly, and I asked what the alternative was, and she said, and I was told eating disorders, but we thought we'd give that to the other person. She's a girl, and I said, oh, it's interesting. I've just done a gastro post, and I've just done 6 months working with several clients with eating disorders, and I'd like the opportunity to carry on. And I was there, I think, 8 years, and I haven't kind of looked back. And what was interesting for me, though, with eating disorders was I realised very quickly that I had a real affinity for the presentation. Even though I haven't suffered from an eating disorder myself, all the elements that my clients were presenting with, I had complete understanding of. And what I realised quite quickly was that if I was a female, I'd have clearly had an eating disorder, but I had a powerful inner critic that I was managing with unrelenting standards and striving, and I put mine into areas that were more in line with male aspiration. So muscularity in sport. I was a international athlete and semi-professional, and all other those areas I was putting in, but that didn't meet diagnostic criteria for an eating disorder, unless I guess you move towards muscle dysphoria, etc., which was potentially there a little bit. But the key bit was really understanding what my clients were struggling with and being able to be effective at supporting them, and then really enjoying that work. So that's kind of where it all started.
Wow. Do you know something that's really, really important to us is lived experience? So, I mean, obviously, you're very well studied from how you introduced yourself. I have a bit of a hobby, a weird hobby of training in lots and lots of different types of therapies. That comes from a place of insecurity, of feeling not good enough and not knowing enough. But actually, through all the books that you read, for me, the richest stuff is when it comes from lived experience. So I'm quite fascinated by that. The reason you got sort of carried on down this is you're like, oh, I get this from a sort of experiential lived place.
It's interesting. So I used to work for an eating disorders service, Ruth, and Tom and I met many years ago when we were both working in Harley Street. And I worked mainly with binge eating disorder. And I have to say, it was that element of the challenges that I could relate to most of all.
Definitely. And something I realised years later, I was diagnosed as an adult with ADHD and realising I adapted it I was working with a psychologist recently and was asked the question, I did a check, and at the time, 74% of my caseload had a diagnosis of autism or ADHD within the client group within that, and realising a while there was also an affinity with those elements due to complex presentations and eating disorders or body image. A significant amount of our caseload, or my particular caseload, are individuals who are either diagnosed with those presentations or are undiagnosed and but still showing significant traits.
What's your understanding of why those two sit so closely together, or why that, the body image and the complexity has that overlap with that neurotype or those neurotypes?
This is a massive question.
Okay.
I'm going to start with the nurture side of it. Mm-hmm. So the commonality with pretty much all my clients is the level of adversity they've experienced in the context of trauma with a big T is highly variable. Mm-hmm. A lot of my clients have had significant repeated trauma, but some of them not so much. The commonality across the board, though, tends to be that these are individuals that became highly independent at a young age because they either gave up on their caregivers or they grew up in an environment where it was advantageous to prioritize the needs of others in that environment. So they didn't want to stress their parents or take care away from a struggling sibling by prioritizing their needs. So they wanted to suppress their needs, and in doing so, prioritize others and become, again, highly independent. So there's this element that crosses the board. What's common across all the clients that I've assessed for the last 25 years within this area with neurodiversity is the same story, which is growing up in an education system where they're treated differently. It's a type of intersectionality, that sense of I'm different, there's something wrong and broken, but it's a blind one. It's one where, unlike other types of intersectionality where you can, let's say with the internet now, one of the biggest change I've seen over my career, and maybe some of yours, is the way in terms of individuals with different sexuality are treated. From over the last 25 years, there seems to be quite a dramatic shift in that in a positive direction. And so you hear individuals now, young people growing up and then being able to connect with other people on the internet, even at quite a young age, and being able to normalize their presentation and their experiences. But when someone grows up, let's say, with struggling with autism, it's just they're the problem. I'm the point of difference. There's no one else to look around and go, they're like me because of their faith or color of their skin. And within that sense of isolation and suffering that can occur, but also then how they learn to cope, and that sense of not feeling understood and supported by others then becomes the major. So it's multiplying the level of trauma by the support someone gets. And if that support isn't able to be accessed for a whole host of different reasons, then that person is going to suffer and struggle. And that's the main commonality from a nurture perspective, that you see that point of I'm different and being treated different. And then you then can bring in the nature elements as well, where individuals may struggle more with being emotionally driven, let's say. So the common story I hear from individuals with, say, autism traits is hitting puberty and their friends have urges to connect and bond, and they don't. They're kind of trying to calculate how I need to be to fit in. They're cognitively trying to work through it as opposed to having any kind of felt drive within that sense. So there are kind of neurological aspects as well that amplify some of the nurture elements that create some of the difficulties. And then we can look at, so then from that, it creates incredible vulnerability for the mental health issues we see, because something we can talk about is that if there are 4 main ways we can create confidence and empowerment.
Tom, I think you make some really important points about the potential routes into eating disorders and how that might relate to neurodiversity. I'm also mindful of a comment that I work for a wonderful man in the eating disorder service. He used to say, Georgina, it's all about food and it's not about food. It's so complex and there are so many factors involved. But Tom, you were just about to tell us about these 4 critical points. Do you want to explain a little bit more?
Good. I'll give you a little bit of background to it to kind of make more sense of it. So mammals have been on this planet 250 million years. Humans, 6 million, Homo sapiens, 300. How we're different from reptiles and other animals. There's an adage, there are 2 ways to get a donkey to walk, the carrot and the stick. Mm-hmm. That's completely incorrect. There are 3 ways to get a donkey to walk. There are 2 ways to get a crocodile, carrot and a stick. Stick being basically fear, it's good at not dying, and stick, it's good at reproducing and killing. But there's carrot and sticks. The donkey has a 3rd way you can get it to walk, and it will walk for its friends, its lovers, its family, its pack. So that's the 3rd way. Now, in that 3rd way is, as mammals, that is how we've evolved. We've evolved for 300,000 years in small, very tight packs of around 30 to 60 individuals, mostly tight family within that context. Our entire survival, like all mammals, is based on complete implicit trust that the other members of the pack have your back no matter what. So if you look at any animal program with mammals, you'll see every hunting strategy is based on, so it's whether dolphins, lions, whatever it is, it's implicit trust that everyone does their job effectively. And if they do that, their success rate increases. The most effective hunters, I think, are the dogs, the pattern dogs in Africa. Why? They're one of the most effective as a group, managing, supporting each other, effectively working as a group. Defense is the same. Most effectively, you have to implicitly trust in the attacking principles. If you can get one to antagonize one out of the group, you kill it, or if you get it to run away from the group, you kill it. So you have this strategy, and when you look at human games, sport is the same thing. Attack is about pulling people out of position, blah, blah, blah. And it's this same thing that plays out. Why this is so implicit is our entire psychology and what, in terms of create sense of empowerment and positive mental health and resilience, is based on having and requiring this implicit trust that if you fall, if you're threatened, you have implicitly more 100% that people have your back because they've always been there. Yes. So in order for a child to thrive and for us to thrive, we have to have that both within the family structure, the community, and at school. And individuals that have that have confidence. There are elements that are required for resilience, but they have that confidence that we need in order to thrive. Now, the basis of those 4 key things are, one side I haven't really talked about, the other element is the social ranking. So the other way that to defend, we need a leader, and we need social ranking. So the first way we create competence empowerment is aspiration, drive, is positively comparing to others. So it's looking around and making steps to self-improve ourselves, but always in the context of others in our society and culture. So that creates achievement. The second one, and that's pushing ourselves up compared to others. The other way we can do it is push others down. We can do that through judgment in our heads. And I catch myself all the time. I go to a conference and think, what on earth? That's a load of rubbish. Why am I doing it? Because it makes me feel better. I didn't do it consciously, but critiquing anyone else, like, oh, yes. All verbally, bullying, control, manipulation, so we can feel good from crushing and pushing others down. So that's, from a CFT perspective, there are blue drive system ways of creating positive affect.
And CFT is compassion-focused therapy, isn't it? Just to
compassion-focused
catch that little
therapy.
acronym there.
The other two ways we can create empowerment and confidence is through, as I said, that is through attachment, through bond. So I can feel the most powerful and confident I can feel is when I imagine someone trying to kidnap my child. 100% I throw myself in front of a car. I've actually got a story about nearly throwing myself in front of a charging deer. Was it last year in Richmond Park? To protect the kids. 100% I was going to do it. And I knew I was going to end up probably dead or in hospital, but luckily the deer changed course and changed its mind. But, there's nothing more powerful than a parent protecting their offspring. And there are two directions for that in terms of this empowerment. One is the empowerment to protect, and the other is to care. So that's that power. I've got you, here you are. So that's the other confidence empowerment, to care and protect. And then the last one is the care and protect from feeling the support of others having our back. So we have these four. Our difficulty within, if we reverse back to what we're talking about, and if we have those four, we have resilience. There are other components as well, but those four are crucial, and that's what creates confidence. If you start taking some of these away, you see different mental health conditions arise. If you take out confidence and capacity for that drawn out from feeling support of others, because that was damaged growing up through loss of trust or other elements, or you don't feel you get much from caring for others, your only two ways of feeling good are pushing yourself up and pushing others down. And that's narcissism. So when if you've got no empathy and your only way of functioning is to prove you're better than everyone else and have to continue to believe that and push others down, then that's going to drive that. Most people that I work with eating disorders, BDD, etc., they tend to be highly perfectionist-driven on unrelenting standards. They're really good at giving care and completely terrified of receiving it. And that's because they've learned. Because the difficulty when you haven't had that consistent growing up, that sense of support and care, when you try and give it later, it doesn't bring soothing and safety, it brings threat, because you've learned to mistrust, or you learn that if you take care, your harm is fused with shame and fear, so you're harming your loved ones. So, that fusing occurs, so it's very difficult to retrofit that, and that's one of the key focuses of compassion-focused therapy, is developing that ability to enable that sense of empowerment and confidence from your support structures and building those.
The theme that really stands out to me as I listen to you is connection, about how we connect with ourselves and how we connect with others, and the very complex nature of that can be nuanced, twisted and changed according to sort of nature and nurture as we grow up. And so if they're sort of distorted in particular ways, there's an increased chance of a body dysmorphic presentation. Would that be fair to say?
Generally, presentations across the board, that's what I had in the absence of that.
Yeah, so this is called this is transdiagnostic. So if someone grows up and they learn that not to trust the support of others and to be an individual, then their only ways to feel empowered are either basically unrelenting standards and drive, bullying others, or caring for others. And normally a blend of those three, but that last one's missing. The problem with that is that it all becomes quite unrelenting, and the struggles to receive that care. In that dynamic, particularly if caring for others is still quite small and they're driven by those, when we look at our culture and what's aspirational, it means we need then, our striving becomes unrelenting because we've got no way to calm down. The bit I hadn't mentioned is you've got 4 ways to feel empowered. The first 2 are excitatory. They excite the central nervous system. So it's happiness, but it's achievement-based. Excitatory. It's winning, yes. Putting others down. It's woo, World Cup winning. When we feel threatened, that's also excitatory to the central nervous system. The only way we can calm our central nervous system is through that calming, caring for others to calm and contain, or feeling cared. When those systems are underdeveloped, we lose our ability to calm and contain. So our only ways to feel and control and manage threat is through striving and busyness. So that's going to drive unrelenting standards. That's perfectionism. if there's a fear base, if you internalize fear, vulnerability, uncertainty, that will drive generalized anxiety disorders, obsessionality, any different strategies to control fear and uncertainty. The unrelenting standards is there to control shame. So we manage shame by creating pride and achievement. So when we're working with complex presentations where there's OCD as well as eating disorders, or there's BED, you're playing with different directions of the fear is driving unrelenting worry, ruminating, to trying to find ways of controlling that anxiety, while the unrelenting standards is trying to control the internalized shame. So, and when you try and manage one, the other one then picks up. So you've got to work in a way that over time learns to manage all these elements, calms them down, and be able to build resilience through being able to feel empowered through other areas of life, through attachment and kind of retrofitting those core things we all need to thrive.
I'm curious about how this all fits in with what I know is a special interest for you, Tom, body image. And I think we all know what it's like to struggle with our body image, be you male, female, eating disorders, non-eating disorders. I'm curious about what influences the discomfort we often experience with our bodies.
What influences... Actually, that was what I was trying to get to answering, and I went off on a bit of a tangent. It's when you think, and the reason was I was getting towards aspiration. So unrelenting standards and striving, what then dictates where we go is our culture. When we grow up, and particularly the point where puberty hits and our hormones come in, and with then that hormonal drive, I think it's a 900% increase in hormones in women and 3,000 in young men. And that hormonal shift drives us, it's like this chemical drive to need to be wanted and desired, both socially and sexually. And it's at that then we look around as what do I need to be desirable? So we've got that, and look at our society. And this is where obviously marketing, media and exploitation is coming in, is that's dictated. And what does it tell our young women that they need to be wanted and desired? It is... I've already said it is body image, it's appearance. Research shows it. Let's not just be saying it.
I saw a video recently, and I was absolutely intrigued about the subtlety of it. And it was a little girl and her father, and they were showing how influential this is. The little girl was going, "Join me as I put my makeup on." And basically the little girl was putting her makeup on, like, holding up the concealer for her eyes. I mean, beautiful young child who doesn't need makeup, and then putting on the lip gloss and so on. And the reflections afterwards were, they didn't say anything, they didn't mention a brand, they didn't do anything, but just that you were joining this little girl with her makeup. Other little girls who identified with her would want that same makeup. Not just that, but they would also want to conceal the bags under their eyes that they don't have because they're children. They would want to be putting sort of lip gloss on and making themselves look like women when they're children. And I just thought, wow, that really is driving home messages of your body is not good enough as it is, right from a very, very, like, I'm talking pre-teens age. Quite heartbreaking.
100%.
Yeah.
It's terrifying.
I think, Ruth, when you look at our age, middle-aged women, I don't know what your social media is flooded with, but mine it's all about collagen. Collagen all the time. What are you going to do about your wrinkles? Well, I wasn't thinking about my wrinkles until you keep kind of putting it in my face. And I'm saying to my husband, do you know, it's a bit expensive, but I'm quite wanting some of this collagen. Oh, nonsense. Leave it. We're not spending that.
Yeah, it is terrifying. So going back to that point of what as a society in the West, we're moving further and further away from close, authentic relationships and community, and we're moving towards westernized individualism. So in terms of those four key things, we're shrinking the connection ones and we're driving individual aspiration. That's basically what we're doing. In terms of primary aspiration is to do with attainment as opposed to appearance. Attainment. Now, historically, attainment is job, wealth, what your partner looks like, your suit, your watch, your car, and your body can be attained. But as a young male, when you look at all these things, they can't attain all of them to be masculine. The only thing they can attain is a potential sexual partner and body, because within that context, the two are linked. So you have this huge movement on social media, which relates to women trying to improve their attractiveness with the primary pursuit of attracting a mate within that context. And obviously this is also linked to not just incel stuff and other elements that kind of cross into this field. And this is what we're seeing with a lot of our young men. What do I need to be desirable aspiration in our society? And it's really become moving in a very scary direction.
This is a fascinating area around culture. So I guess when I think about sort of BDD, body dysmorphic
disorder.
Disorder, thank you. When I think about that, I kind of think about it as quite an individualized thing, but it's not. It's we are part of a system, aren't we? And to kind of think about it as westernized aspirational living, and that there's something a little toxic, dare I say, about the pursuit of trying to achieve these individualistic aspirational things. And I guess I was struck by there's something about being part of a family and being family focused and other focused and being part of a network. And that kind of, in a sense, for me, as I think about it, I'm happy to be corrected if you've got other perspectives, but in a sense, as I listen to it, there's something about dialing down that individual pursuit of competitive aspirational climbing. I don't know.
Not necessarily the way I look at it, because I tend to, a large group of, I do work with a lot of individuals who are the peaks of their industry in different areas. So highly driven, highly successful individuals who are miserable. I think and we can look at it back to that all of our self-esteem has come from achievement. And when you reach the top, where is there to go? Nowhere. You have to keep going. You can't retire. Everything has been about moving forward. But when you can't move forward, and this is similar to anorexia, what you've done is that the higher you go, the harder it is to get the self-esteem you got at the beginning. So you end up feeling worse and worse, and you end up feeling more distressed. And what's missing is the kind of that connection, taking people on that journey, that kind of bond. That's the bit that's missing. So working with a lot of individuals in that area, embarrassing, I've completely forgotten your question.
I'm intrigued by where you're going with it. I guess I was kind of thinking about the individualised, individualistic society versus the sort of cultural society, and kind of thinking, is that better, I suppose, in terms of body dysmorphia?
What we're trying to do, because this is the same when we're working with anorexia as, let's say, with somebody in any kind of unrelenting standards. What we're trying to understand is that when people approach anorexia in a really unhelpful way, this idea, you need to take away your anorexia to recover. No, you don't. And I know this for myself. I have anorexia. That's why I've been so effective at treating it. Is that, wait a minute, I have a very powerful inner critic. I have unrelenting standards, these other parts. Just like anorexia now, those two combine, these other bits are inhibited. And when that's focused on food and other areas of restriction, that's what you get. Now, when you're helping someone recover, the things, if you're going to take away anorexia, they identify with what you're going to take away the parts of me where I can be incredibly driven, incredibly successful, and somebody who's special. This is from my special trait. I can be, I can achieve incredible things, and you want to take that bit away. So what you're trying to do within that is, absolutely, in order to recover from anorexia, you have to build something better. And what we're really, so that they have an option and a choice. So you're building somebody's ability to feel capable and empowered in other areas of their lives. And this is what in the treatment that we do in clinical with our digital treatments, I call this kind of two-step therapy. It's first being able to practice building and stepping into a capable, empowered version of yourself, which most people have from different domains of their life, and then be able to bring that to varying levels of adversity where they struggle to bring it to. Typically in anorexia, can they take a version where they feel empowered and capable and bring that to their eating or their body image or their other areas. It doesn't change their beliefs, let's say. They might not still like their body, but as opposed to feeling terrified and disempowered and shameful and overwhelmed by it, they can feel completely capable, even when they still might not like their body. So it's being able to develop that more resilient, empowered version and bring that to adversity. And so when they're able to do that and feel more capable and empowered through other areas of their life, then the components of anorexia that you're trying to calm them down and make them that they're able to control those parts as opposed to those parts controlling them, because it's their only way to get any sense of control or empowerment.
Thank you, Thomas. That's so interesting. So I think those are really powerful points, Thomas, and kind of what I'm hearing there is, where do we direct our energy? Do we focus it on changing our weight and shape and essentially harming us? Or can we start to focus our energy on a bigger picture that is more empowering for ourselves and for others? Now, I wanted to think about our discussion from an angle of the people that I used to spend a lot of time working with, the people with binge eating disorder. And they very genuinely had people say absolutely horrific things to them on a regular basis. So my clients would often struggle with their weight and feel enormously disempowered. And the message that the world could often give them is that you are not okay. And we started to have to really reflect on actually, what is it that makes people valuable to you? When you choose your friends, do you go, do you know what, I really like Sally because she looks great in skinny jeans? Or do you say, do you know what, I really like Sally because she's warm, she's funny, she's interesting, she treats me with kindness? The things that determine who I allow in my inner circle are not weight and shape. I think it would be quite unusual for people to go down that angle, but nothing is ever impossible. So if we can see the value in other people and what matters, can we start to build that within ourselves? So rather than our weight and shape being the primary part of our identity, we can't put it in check where it belongs. Now, there is something about, how do I look after my body? Absolutely. But how do we think about it? And Gina, as you were talking earlier, and we were reflecting on all the things that are coming in, influencing us in terms of what's affecting how we feel about ourselves, I was reminded of a little story. And the story was, for me, when I was about 18, I was chatting to this man, and this man said, Gino, have you ever thought about having a nose job? And I was stepped back. And do you know what went through my head? It was my mother. Because when I was a little girl, I remember saying to my mother, do you know, Mummy, my nose turns up at the end. And my mother said to me, a lot of people would pay a lot of money for a nose like that. So when this man came along and insulted my nose, her words went right through my mind. And it's interesting, I could say I bounced it off. I still remember the story, so I didn't entirely, but I didn't percolate on it for very long. And it's something about, how do we support our children? So I have 3 young children. How do we develop a healthy sense of ourselves so we're less bamboozled by the world and what the world tells us we should be?
Yeah, there's something there, resilience, really, you're talking about, would you say, Georgina?
Well, I think my mother helped me to cultivate a resilient attitude.
There is. So that makes sense of what you're describing, what I kind of touched on back there. What you've done growing up is you've internalized those support structures. So when you faced adversity, it wasn't you on your own. You drew on that internalized sense of your your pack, your tribe, your family, and that those experiences came to the fore and created that resilience, that knowledge that and that internalization of those positives, and that voice then in your head will say, what we kind of call that, the primary coach in your head is a caring, compassionate one. That's what we're actually trying to do in a lot of the treatments that I work with, and is that we kind of work in something called multiple minds, which is where you're working with your critical part of your mind and trying to manage that part, and you're trying to build a part that is more effective at supporting. So again, we're not trying to get rid of our critic, we're just trying to stop it being disempowering and punitive, so it disempowers us, and we want to shift it to one where it's able to appraise us in a way that's empowering. So it can still critique our behavior, but it does it in a way that makes us feel empowered to do something about it, as opposed to disempowered and ashamed and broken. So it's about kind of changing those. And one thing I tend to do with clients is look at what I kind of call the 6 key things. As the 6 key things a child needs to thrive. The first one is having an environment that encourages someone to talk and express their opinions and emotions, so that talking about feelings and talking about things end up being a positive experience. Because if for any reason that's inhibited, because it doesn't feel safe to talk about feelings, they get fused with shame and fear, and someone's is going to learn when we try to talk or when we try to express their emotions, they're going to be inhibited by their fear or their shame of how that's received. And that's going to block someone's ability to regulate their emotions effectively. It means if really severe, they only really either feel fear or shame or achievement. And that's what you have in a lot of individuals with anorexia. They just feel those emotions. Everything else is blocked because they're fused. So they try to feel one emotion, but they get fear or shame instead, because of that fusing of those experiences. The number 2 is having a secure base, having a place you can go to feel safe, secure, and supported. And that's a kind of an interesting one, thinking about internalized fear, that if that isn't the case and someone learns to feel fearful, uncertain, and vulnerability and uncertainty, they have a higher baseline for anxiety, and that's going to drive conditions like GAD or OCD. The next one is to do with kind of consistency in an environment that is relatively consistent. If it's far too chaotic or it's far too rigid, if you imagine a house that's perfectly tidy and it feels anxiety provoking to put anything down, or it's so chaotic, you can't feel any sense of. So the extreme ends of that. Next one, play, which is a really, really interesting one. We may be able to go into it at another point, which at its core is learning the ability to both assert and learn where the boundaries are, pushing ourselves, but also then to listen and receive someone and acknowledge them. And that can be physical, e.g. play fighting, or talking, learning that ability to give and take and boundaries within communication through childhood, adult, and going forward. When people get that wrong, they just learn to dominate and don't listen physically, emotionally, or the other is they learn to subjugate. And that can be in all different forms. And if you end up with one that dominates and one that subjugates, awful things tend to happen. And then we can keep going. I think I've missed one out, but unconditional love or implicit trust, I think is the other one of the 6. And I can't remember. I'm sure I've missed one out, but I've forgotten what it is.
That's fine, Tom. Do you know, this is just so fascinating. It would be lovely to come back and do another pod at another time, if that would be all right with you, kind of unpacking that. But whilst we have you, Tom, I'd really love to hear about the resource that you've crafted that's available electronically.
Absolutely. So actually, it's born out of a couple of different things. So a very long time ago, I worked in an inpatient unit that specialised in taking the most difficult inpatient clients in the country with eating disorders and personality disorders. And I started developing treatments and researching treatments for body image with this particular client group. And that's where my interest within body image started, developing different ways of working. And during COVID, the difficulties, we were getting huge amounts of referrals and waiting lists, and no one was getting any help. So I thought, what if I developed a digital program that was considerably more cost effective than trying to treat within that can help people on waiting lists, so this self-help program. But I wanted to aim it not just, there's bits out there at the mild end, but there's nothing at the moderate end, the moderate severe end, to help people. So I developed this digital program for the self-help guided self-help, but also particularly for clinicians to be able to support clients through. So it's designed to bolt on to psychotherapy, CBT therapy, any type of treatment. It can bolt on the side of it, and the client can work through that, and the clinician can then support them through their preferred therapy model, because the package does the elements. The first half of it's a kind of a trans-diagnostic approach, and what I mean by that is it helps everybody from a mental health perspective. It touches a lot of the stuff we've talked about here, which is building up resilience and capacity to confront our challenges and adversity. And it's based on a principle, I call it kind of a two-step therapy. We don't get to choose who we become in different situations. If I'm a child in a classroom, I'll shift into Tom, maybe diligent classroom Tom. And then when I go into the playground, I'll completely change into running around, kicking the football, I'll be playground Tom. That's a subconscious process. I don't get to choose. And we learn how to be into which version of ourselves to go into in our childhood. And this is one of the major barriers to actually engaging effectively in psychology and with other elements, is that who we become in adversity, we don't get to choose. So if we shift into a disempowered, overwhelmed, fearful version, that version of me can't overcome whatever I'm trying to engage with. So if we're in an eating disorder, that might be food or body image. I can't look at a mirror. When I do, I feel bad and disgusting, and it distorts my perception of me. I'm in a trap that I can't escape from. Two-step therapy is about bringing agency and ability to decide who I want to be in adversity. What is the best version of me? And step one is about practicing, doing lots of experiential helping people step into versions that they feel empowered, and being able to have a choice to step into that at will. And then step two is to gradually expose it and bring that version to increasing levels of adversity. Now, you don't actually have to build that version. Even the most quiet, unconfident, terrified, traumatized individuals, I've always, sometimes hard work, found a version of them that is powerful. I got two recent ones with a girl who is the most quiet, unconfident person you could ever possibly meet. But historically, she's done competitive running, and when she's running, she runs past people. She can see that person, she can chase them down and go past them. It is the only place she can feel confident, and I'm saying the only time. But she's in that moment, she is a different human being. And so we have that sense of empowerment. And I worked recently with a guy as well with a similar profile, both neurodivergent, out of interest. And his was, he used to play table tennis, and loved smashing the ball. And sometimes when he won a point, going, yes. But other areas of his life, terrifying, say, boo to a goose within this. But so we're able to find these empowered and build on them in session or with a program, building them experientially, and then practice stepping in these empowered, building more empowerment through some of the areas I talked about, connection from others, the empowerment to protect. So building more confidence and empowerment in other domains. And then in the second part of the treatment, then bringing that to begin with body image. So it's working through a process, dealing with certain behaviors, and all the way up to confronting our own internal adversity, so confronting our critic and working with that until that becomes more effective and helpful. And then how do you manage external critics is what it ends up finishing with. So it's actually helping people manage something you talked about with binge eaters or people in bigger bodies who, or any experience of where they're being externally attacked and criticized, and helping by the time they got to the end of the treatment, they're able then to relatively easily have resilience to deal with that and in a really effective way.
Tom,
so it's kind of
what
working through
I love about this is there's something about this model that what you're doing is you're helping people step into their God-given authentic selves, but it's them in. So when that girl was running, that's her authentic self, but she's struggling to translate that into others. So you're not trying to make her be something or help her conform to something that society wants her to be. You're listening out for an authentic core aspect of herself in another domain of life and nurturing that into the other areas where they're struggling. I think that's a beautiful model. You're changing how I'm going to do therapy now.
I'm going all chariots of fire. So when I run, I feel God's pleasure. It just reminded me of that, Ruth. I don't have that one.
So it's who you construct. Who do you want to be? What's the best version of you want to be to confront this adversity and being able to draw on the other areas and be able to step into. So it's all about their values and who they want to be, not how they've been taught to be or how they've learned to be. And this is really important with body image because it's difficult to treat body image with people under a certain age because they're still stuck completely in this is how I have to be to. You have to get towards a certain point to reflect typically and go, actually, I don't want to be a hat stand. I don't want to just be known for my body. I want to be, I do want people to appreciate my body, but I want primarily to be this. So the values, and that's what we're trying to do with bodies is it shifts someone to how they're being in the world because of all the influences and pressures, and get them to shift to how they want to be in the world based on their values and aspiration, and you're shifting. That's the direction of travel. It's driven by somebody's own values. It's not mine. The same with anorexia. Where they want to get to is shaped by their values, not mine at all.
Out of interest, is there an age curve? So Georgina was laughing at me the other day, again, because we were talking, she reminded me of my niece is about 10 years younger than me. So she's in her early 40s and I'm in my early 50s. Anyway, when I went to her 40th, I had my hair up. And she said to me, "Oh, Auntie Ruth, I don't take this the wrong way." When someone says that, you're like, right, just brace myself. Don't take this the wrong way. But I love how you're letting yourself go grey naturally. I thought, do you know what? My eyesight's going, so I can't see it. And when my hair's in a parting here, it seems to cover it up. And so when I got home, I had to look. I've got loads of grey under there. Hadn't noticed it. But I've got to an age where I don't care so much. Whereas if that was like 10, 20, 30 years ago, I probably would have cared a bit more, but I don't care as much. Anyway, it led me to thinking with body dysmorphia, is there sort of like an age curve where you see people? So you talked about the young end, but is there a point where people stop caring, or do you see do you still have like the older age range as well?
No, it's across the board. It is massively across the board. It is.
And I think that's the difference because it's the pathology, Ruth. It is entrenched. So I think, we might all know what it's like to have a little bit of a body image issue. But if you have body dysmorphic disorder, you are not seeing yourself accurately at all. And unchecked, that will go on. So it's this level of severity. Is there anything in what I'm saying there, Tom?
Yeah, no, I agree with you, but it doesn't have to be pathologized in that way. I mean, the question I asked somebody is, and everybody can play this game, is on any given day over the last month, how much of what made you feel good or bad about yourself as a given day is related to eating, shape, weight, and appearance? So as a percentage. And I guess a lot of my client groups, that is, let's say, somewhere between 50 and 90% of what dominates their sense of self-worth and self-esteem is appearance related. And that when that is that dominant, then how much is there left to generate esteem and confidence from the other areas? And then minimalize and marginalizing it's minimal. So it means it doesn't matter that their friends throw a party or people love them or care or they get a job promotion because their mind is minimized, not just coming, but feeling wise. So if appearance, and it's good or bad. So if they lose weight, they might feel 70% amazing. If they gain weight or it changes, 70% awful. So it's how much that dominates. But when it gets to a certain point, it's going to become pathological. But people don't see that because we live in a culture where this is normal. So, and they look at body disturbance. I think I tried to relook at some of the research recently. I wasn't able to see much of it, but I think I'm correct in saying the average female in the UK sees herself one dress size bigger than she actually is. So body dysmorphia is normal in our culture, where because of the threat in relation to into appearance in females, and it, these things are changing, I guess, as a culture with men as well. It's always been there, but it's definitely increasing within that. So, what you're trying to help people to recover is then what percentage do you want of your self-worth and self to be with an appearance, and what do you want other elements to look like? And that's what you're building. So they're building more confidence, because it's not just about knowing. You can do gratitude, but if you don't feel it and connect and able to have a physiological feel that sense of confidence and empowerment, then it doesn't change. And that's what you need to, you almost need to grow the others and shrink the importance, as opposed to try and shrink it, because there's a vacuum otherwise. You have to help people feel empowered in these other areas of their lives that aren't empowering them, but only if they want to go in that direction. But most people do. I can't remember the last time I ever worked with someone who said, I want my appearance to be 70% of my self-esteem and self-worth. It's normally somewhere between 15 and 30 max typically. So they're motivated to kind of change that, so they become more resilient. And at the same time, it actually mean how, it doesn't change how they might, or it can change how they see their body, because if the threat reduces, the important reduces, the body dysmorphia reduces, and beginning to see their bodies like everybody else does. And that's what we're doing in the digital program by doing some of that exposure stuff later on. What you're doing is you're reducing that perception disturbance, because the importance, and with it, the level of threat reduces. So then with it, the perception disturbance reduces as well.
Thank you, Tom. That is enormously helpful. And I have to say, your resource sounds amazing. So clinicians can purchase it to inform their thinking when working with clients, but equally, so if I as an individual were sitting listening today and I thought, gosh, I really resonate with what Tom is saying, and actually I think there could be real value in me doing this, can they just get online and purchase and engage with your program remotely?
Yeah, they've got a couple of options. One, they can just purchase and do it. It's a self-help program. We've done a first trial of pilot studies and research and show that we've had some great outcomes, but at the moment it's only as effective as any other digital self-help. Because the people that completed it did fantastic, but there's still a moderate dropout rate, which is at the same level of dropout of anybody doing a digital program. We also offer guided self-help. So we have research psychologists who, at a very reasonable rate, then can meet with them as required to do guided self-help and support them through that stepped process. And I use it with a vast majority of my clients, because it means that in session I can focus on trauma rescripting or blocks and barriers, and the treatment, they can work on the experiential stuff, and they can do the amount of content I'd have to do in sessions to help people move forward. I don't have to worry about now. They can work through it at their pace. I can help them in any blocks in particular parts, so I can then take that and work on the little bits and help them through it and work on other stuff. And that's why it works with any other therapeutic model, because you can work in the way you want and while they work through it, and you can either focus on other areas and then blend in bits. So it tends to work effectively like that. But we've got some more pilot studies with it, because one of the areas where it's unique is we're trying to test is it was designed to be first treatment for people who are for body image who are underweight, because there is no body image treatment for people who are underweight. So it's designed for people who are underweight, in a bigger body, healthy weight, BD, eating disorders. So it deals with those core components, so that someone has the ability, and once they've managed with those areas, they also then have the abilities to then push that into eating or other areas if they struggle with binge eating. All the processes are there, so it's very easy then to apply in other areas.
Brilliant. So if I lived in Aberdeen and I wanted to engage with your program, and I wanted to perhaps do some work with your clinicians, can you do that remotely?
Yeah.
You don't have to get down to London.
Since COVID, most of our work's now remote. And even people that say they want individual therapy, when they start coming and they try video calls, they then typically want to shift to those. And you guys are aware that the evidence base from COVID show, surprisingly, we not expected that it was as effective as face-to-face, which was, and yeah, we find that within our outcome measures in the clinic, that there's tends to be no clear difference between face-to-face and video calls. So a lot of our work is in that way now. It's on the body image treatment clinic website.
So Tom, do you know, I think I'm left with a real sense of hope in terms of how you've talked about this, because you're talking about sort of digitalizing something that can go across all different modalities. You're talking about making something very accessible, and that it sounds personalized. It sounds like what you're doing is you're helping people grow the area of strength rather than trying to take something out that is a coping mechanism. And I think that's one of the dangers that can happen in psychology is people try to extract something without thinking about nature abhors a vacuum. So something's going to come flooding back in again. And so for me, I'm really encouraged by the work you're doing. And I just want to say thank you so much for your time today. And hopefully we'll meet again for another pod.
That sounds great. I love what you guys are doing, and love some of the other pods you've done.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for having me. It's been great